Ferrari's hidden weapon. That's what Toto Wolff is terrified of right now. And that fear? It just went public. Because while everyone was watching Mercedes dominate the opening rounds of 2026, Ferrari was quietly building something in the background, something so effective that Mercedes' own team boss accused them of basically cheating. So what is this hidden weapon? How does it actually work? And why has Fred Vasseur just confirmed, in his own words, exactly how Ferrari plans to use it to close the gap once and for all? If you follow Formula One, you already know the story of 2026. Mercedes came out of the gate flying, untouchable. A team that looked like it had solved the new regulations before anyone else even understood them. But here's the question nobody's asking loud enough. What happens when the team in second place refuses to accept that gap as permanent? What happens when Ferrari stops just hoping for a miracle and starts engineering one? Stick with me till the end of this video because I'm going to break down Ferrari's hidden weapon, piece by piece, exactly how it works, why Mercedes is furious about it, and why this single development could decide the entire 2026 championship. Let's start at the beginning. After the opening rounds in Australia and China, Mercedes had already established themselves as the benchmark. Victories, podiums, complete dominance. Kimi Antonelli and George Russell were converting every advantage into results, while Ferrari, even with genuine race pace from both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, kept coming up short. Vasseur, though, wasn't panicking. He was already talking about a plan. Improve every part of the car, not chase one miracle upgrade. That was the philosophy. But here's the twist. What if the biggest single upgrade of Ferrari's entire season was hiding in plain sight the whole time, buried in the sport's technical regulations? That upgrade has a name. ADUO. Additional Development and Upgrade Opportunities. And once you understand what it actually is, you'll understand why this could be the single biggest storyline of Ferrari's season. Here's how it works. The FIA built ADUO specifically to help engine manufacturers who are falling behind the competition catch up during the season. If a manufacturer is found to be at least 2% behind on internal combustion engine performance, they're granted extra development windows, additional chances to upgrade their power unit outside the normal restrictions. Think about that for a second. This isn't a rumor. This isn't a paddock whisper. This is a formal mechanism built into the sport, and Ferrari qualified for it. So here's the first big question. If Ferrari genuinely believed they could outdevelop Mercedes within the normal rules, would they even need something like ADUO? The fact that Ferrari has been leaning on this scheme tells you everything about how serious the underlying deficit really was. But it also tells you something else. Ferrari saw the gap, understood exactly where it was coming from, and went hunting for every legal advantage available to close it. Now, back in Miami, Vasseur was already fielding questions about whether Ferrari would actually qualify for these extra development windows. His response was cautiously confident. He said, in his own words, that he believed Ferrari would fall within the parameters, but that ultimately it was up to the FIA to confirm the numbers. That's Vasseur in a nutshell, isn't it? Never overselling, always waiting for confirmation before celebrating. But behind that careful language, you could sense it. Ferrari knew this upgrade path was coming. Then came Monza, the temple of speed, a circuit where raw engine power matters more than almost anywhere else on the calendar. And this is where Ferrari planned to deploy their ADUO engine development, right at the exact track where every extra tenth from the power unit would be magnified. Coincidence? Or calculated timing? I'll let you decide, but it certainly doesn't feel accidental. Here's where it gets really interesting though, because Vasseur didn't oversell this upgrade either. When asked directly whether the Monza engine development would let Ferrari completely catch Mercedes, his answer was refreshingly honest. Completely catch Mercedes? I would say no, he explained. It will help, that is certain. When you look at Mercedes and Red Bull, we are talking about a difference of 1 or 2 tenths per lap from the engine. In any case, it is not a major advantage to make up. Now sit with that for a second. 1 or 2 tenths per lap. That might sound small, almost insignificant, but in modern Formula One, where championships are decided by fractions of a second across an entire season, 1 or 2 tenths per lap is enormous. That's the difference between starting third and starting seventh. That's the difference between a podium finish and finishing outside the points. So even though Vasseur is publicly managing expectations, refusing to promise a miracle, what he's actually describing is a meaningful, potentially decisive step forward. And here's a question worth asking yourself right now. Why would a team principal deliberately downplay an upgrade that could genuinely close the gap to the championship leaders? Is it humility? Is it strategy? Keeping Mercedes guessing about exactly how big this development really is? Or is it simply Vasseur being brutally honest, refusing to promise something he's not 100% certain of? Whatever the reason, that kind of measured confidence is exactly what's been building trust between Vasseur and his drivers all season. But the story doesn't stop at engines. Because while Ferrari has been working on power unit gains through ADUO, they've also been relentlessly aggressive on the chassis and aerodynamic side. The team brought a major aerodynamic overhaul to the car, followed one race later by an engine performance upgrade at the Austrian Grand Prix. 11 separate upgrades landed in Miami alone. 11. That's not incremental tweaking, that's a full-scale offensive. And this is exactly what triggered the drama with Mercedes. After Austria, Toto Wolff came out and said he was surprised, in his own words, that Ferrari could throw these huge updates at the car the way they were doing it. He even hinted that Ferrari should be running out of cost cap money soon, essentially suggesting Ferrari's development pace might not be sustainable, or worse, might not be entirely within the rules. Now here's the real question. When your closest championship rival starts publicly questioning how you're affording your own development program, is that genuine curiosity, or is that fear? Because Vasseur certainly didn't take it as innocent curiosity. He fired back hard, calling Wolff's insinuations essentially an accusation of cheating. I found it quite ironic coming from Toto and Mercedes, Vasseur said, pointing out that when Red Bull or Mercedes develop aggressively, nobody questions them, they're just called genius. When Ferrari does it, suddenly there are questions about affordability and legality. Vasseur went even further, noting that Ferrari's upgrade rate actually matched both Red Bull and Cadillac through the same stretch of the season, essentially asking why Wolff had singled out Ferrari specifically when other teams were developing just as aggressively. His response to journalists asking him to speculate on Wolff's motives was blunt. If you have to ask something to Toto, go to Toto. Ask him why he spoke about me. Don't ask me the question. Honestly, I have no clue. That's not the response of a team principal who's worried. That's the response of a team principal who knows exactly what his team is doing, has the receipts to back it up, and isn't afraid to push back publicly against one of the most respected figures in the paddock. Doesn't that tell you something about the confidence quietly building inside Maranello? And here's the part that should really excite Ferrari fans. This aggressive development strategy is actually working. Vasseur revealed that Mercedes had been flying before the Spanish Grand Prix, building an advantage of roughly 100 points over just 4 or 5 events. That's a staggering lead. The kind of gap that usually signals a championship is already decided. But since Spain, something changed. Ferrari reversed that trend completely, actually outscoring Mercedes across the following 5 races. And since Monaco specifically, Ferrari has outscored Mercedes by 7 points. Now, is 7 points a dramatic swing? Not yet. Vasseur himself was careful to describe it as progress, not a decisive turnaround. But here's the question that matters most. In a sport where momentum compounds race after race, is a 7-point swing the beginning of something much bigger? Vasseur seems to think so. We have the feeling that we did far from the best of what we can do, and in this situation we are not losing points, he said. Read between the lines there. Ferrari believes they haven't even unlocked their full potential yet, and they're still gaining ground. So what happens when they finally do? Assessing the first half of Ferrari's season overall, Vasseur used a phrase that perfectly captures where this team stands right now. He compared it to a school report card. Good, but could have done better. Progress compared to 2025, definitely, Ferrari is more competitive than they've been in years, but not yet the level required to consistently win. That honesty, that refusal to spin a mediocre result into a fake victory lap, is exactly why so many fans and even rival teams respect Vasseur's leadership, even when they're frustrated with him. So let's zoom out and put the entire picture together. Ferrari currently sits second in the Constructors' Championship, but still faces a significant gap to Mercedes. They've deployed an aggressive multi-front strategy, relentless aerodynamic upgrades, a dedicated power unit development plan through the ADUO scheme, and a Monza-timed engine upgrade specifically built to exploit the track where horsepower matters most. They've triggered a public feud with Mercedes' team principal, a feud that, whether Vasseur intended it or not, has put Ferrari's development program directly in the spotlight. And most importantly, the underlying results are starting to shift. 5 races of outscoring Mercedes, momentum that didn't exist earlier in the season. Here's the question I really want you to think about. If Ferrari keeps trending in this direction, if that 7-point swing since Monaco becomes a 14-point swing, then a 30-point swing, how many races would it actually take before Ferrari isn't just chasing Mercedes anymore, but genuinely threatening them for the championship? And if that happens, what does it mean for Lewis Hamilton's championship hopes? What does it mean for Charles Leclerc, who's shown flashes of real pace all season? And what does it mean for Toto Wolff, who's already publicly rattled enough to accuse his closest rival of pushing the rules? This is exactly why the second half of the 2026 season is shaping up to be one of the most fascinating title fights in years. Not because Mercedes has suddenly gotten worse, but because Ferrari has stopped accepting the gap as fixed and started attacking it from every possible angle: aerodynamics, power unit, strategy, and even the psychological battle happening in press conferences. So now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Ferrari's ADUO engine upgrade, combined with their aggressive development pace, is enough to genuinely close the gap to Mercedes before the season ends? Do you think Toto Wolff's frustration is a sign that Mercedes knows something we don't, that Ferrari's threat is more real than anyone's willing to admit publicly? And most importantly, if this momentum continues, could we actually be looking at a genuine 3-way title fight between Mercedes, Ferrari, and whoever else steps up in the second half of the season? Drop your predictions in the comments below right now. I want to know if you're buying into the Ferrari resurgence or if you think this is all just clever expectation management from Vasseur. And if this video helped you understand exactly what Ferrari's hidden weapon really is and why it matters, do me a favor. Hit that like button so more fans can see the real story behind the headlines. Subscribe if you haven't already, because this championship battle is only getting started. And turn on notifications, because the moment that Monza engine upgrade hits the track, you are not going to want to miss what happens next. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.